lots riding on the next generation designed to outfit troops. It's only been 8 years since the Army spent $5 billion on camo that critics say didn't fool anyone.
The technology we're looking for are technologies that we know there are thousands of inventors and groups around the world over the years who have been victimized by new energy suppression.
Energy, and in particular the suppression of energy technologies which could revolutionize the planet and get rid of the need for oil, coal and nuclear as power sources.
His father, who worked with the Germans and a whole bunch of Nazis after the war on time travel technology, and actually working on what they called a Zeitlaufer, which is a time machine in essence, and an ability to actually travel through a man-portable device to be able to travel through time.
Some other stuff I worked with, because of the tissue regeneration stuff I was involved with, a lot of the craft that I was kind of brought into different projects to look at the craft, because the craft were actually alive.
The craft were alive.
The craft were alive, and they were conscious.
It was once something that belonged only to science fiction, but now Japanese researchers have created technology that's the first step towards making objects invisible.
This summer, he showed us the science behind every shape, size, and shade of these pixels.
You now have your camouflage. So we're trying to trick the brain into seeing things that aren't actually there.
Digital patterns recreate shapes already found in nature, and 3D layering creates depth and shadows where none exist.
What's coming up down the road and very quickly is the Harry Potter cloak.
I was a child participant in DARPA's Project Pegasus, which was the U.S. time-space program at the time of the emergence of different forms of time travel in the U.S. defense technical community. It's been concealed from the American people that time travel existed as the secret twin, essentially, of Project Manhattan, the atomic bomb project.
We see things when an external light source, the light bounces off the object, and then the reflected light strikes our eye. If the light is not reflected from the object, but instead bends around the object, then, as far as our eyes are concerned, it's as if the object isn't there.
He then works at the Montauk Project, where they were actually using this, this big device that they called the Beast to actually teleport things, through space and stuff to the moon and whatever else. And
how invisible are we talking here? If I walked into a room with a soldier wearing one of these cloaks,
you wouldn't see him at all. He would be completely invisible to you.
The technology comes from 2003, but its developers say the Harry Potter-like invisibility cloak is just the beginning.
Metamaterials had something called what's called a negative index of refraction. For an object that was coated in a material that had a negative index of refraction, these metamaterials, the light would bend around it, but not strike it and bounce towards our eyes. So the material would appear to be invisible.
He described going to Area 51 and seeing this power system that was actually a living being.
Yes.
But it was this very large thing that had it looked like a skeleton over the surface of it. It had tissue components, but it also had...
Throughout space there is energy. Then it is a mere question of time that man will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very real work of nature, will be driven by a power obtainable at any point in the universe.
In 1953, using German technology, using Sopwith camels, and canvas and wire and stuff, and biplanes, to within 15 years, having basically interplanetary craft. In other words, having Mercury drives, having implosion engines, having saucers that have the capability of flying around in space for 4 or 5 hours or so, to quite possibly allowing them interstellar travel to the star system of Aldebaran.
This isn't make-believe. The military has seen the so-called quantum stealth technology. It works by bending the light around an object, even concealing most of a person's shadow.
They could actually pull out, very similar to what they carry with a survival blanket, throw it over top of them, and unless you walked right into them, you wouldn't know that they were there.
25 years later, by 1968, the U.S. defense community had pioneered Tesla teleportation, which is the capability to open up a vortal tunnel in time-space through which somebody can pass and by the fall of 1970 had found a way to adjust the time of the arrival of the individual via teleportation, backward or forward in time.
Time travel is something you have to take very seriously, because Einstein's equations do allow for time travel, and they're blueprints. Blueprints for different kinds of time travel designs that are compatible with Einstein's theory.
Retroreflective projection technology uses a computer, a video camera and projector to shine background images onto the front of a subject wearing specialized clothing, creating the illusion of invisibility.
The Federation of American Scientists in 2010 wrote a report on this, their national security project, that over 5,100 patents had been seized. They go in and they just seize it. Or it begins to emerge and it gets tied up in a legal or business entanglement. And usually the business that is doing this is a front for the intelligence community and or the cartels, petrodollar, macroeconomic interests who want to keep this secret.
Could such a civilization build a wormhole to travel from here to another galaxy? And when you ask that kind of a question, you then go into the laws of physics and you probe it mathematically, geometrically in the laws of physics, and it teaches you a lot about the nature of space and time. The warping of space in a wormhole is so intense. It's like the warping of space in a stretched rubber membrane.
The diglocka, or the clock, or what they call the Nazi bell, came from a crashed ship in the Black Forest, which was then found by Hans Kammler.
But it also had technology components. It was some weird blend of technology.
That's right. It's right. And it's already started. And I was part of that movement too, where we formulated tissue into titanium. It's called osseointegration.
As to why they have these open circular concrete structures. And the idea was you chained up the bell in the middle of these things, the diglocka, and then you put the ship on top. The ship would float on the top of it, and then it would float above the diglocka. They'd turn the thing on, and it would create this vortex that would then take the ship, supposedly on the trip to Aldebaran.
Time is like a river, old man river, that speeds up and slows down around stars, is that the river of time may have whirlpools. And the river of time may fork into two separate rivers.
Okay.
And this explains the paradoxes of time travel.
They found that the bell, when you turn this thing on, created a time-space vortex that allowed them to tune it so you could actually go to Aldebaran.
Tesla's greatest contribution to applied science was the discovery of a form of energy that allows us to bend time-space to the point of opening tunnels up in it through which we can pass uninjured across great distances.